My name is Anna Karas.
And I'm Irene Johnson.
And we are here to bring you the Virtual Book Club Facebook Live edition of
The Madwomen's Ball.
Show them that cover.
So this book is my choice. It was my pick this time. And it was a very interesting book.
Yes, it was. So here is the author, Victoria Moss, who is a French woman.
And a French author.
A French author, yes.
So this book was actually translated from French. It actually came out as a French novel first. And just a little history of the novel. Some of the characters in the book are actual real characters from the historical time frame of the time that this book was written.
Which is the 1880s in Paris.
Yes, and the asylum, which you can say better than me.
Salpêtrière.
There we go. Is actually a real place in Paris.
Yes.
So the setting is actually a historical place in Paris, and it actually was an asylum for women back in that time frame. And Dr. Charot, did I say that right?
I think you did, yes.
He was actually a French doctor, neurologist during that time frame in the asylums as well. So there's a little bit of truth mixed in with the fiction here.
And please forgive us if we butcher the French names, because well, what we're going to do today is we're going to do sort of an Americanization of the French names that are in this book, so you can, as Americans, know who we're talking about, and we can all have a common. So we're going to say Genevieve, we're going to say Eugenie, and then there's going to be Theo, yes. So, and then Salpêtrière. So
we'll let her say that one.
Salpêtrière. Okay, so let's get to the questions. Well, first of all, what was your initial impression of the book?
I thought for a book that was translated from French to English, I thought I was going to have a more difficult time reading it and understanding it, and I didn't. I thought it was a very easy plot to read. The book overall is very macabre. And so it's very dark, but at the same time, there's an enlightening to it when you read the book and you read about some of the female friendships that are formed here and the resilience of the female. I think that is an essence in this book. And so overall, I think definitely worth a read. Very short book. It's only 210 pages. I think on your Kindle you said it was a couple hundred.
Yeah, I think in my Kindle it was like 130 pages. So it was a short book, but I thought it was very well written and an interesting plot. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Well, we didn't actually post any questions this month because usually what I do is I take questions from the internet where other people have, like especially the publishers have published reading group guides, and I take the questions from there. This book did not have any of that. And so we actually had to read the book and come up with our own questions.
Absolutely.
Which we did. So these questions are brand new for everybody. So let's start with the first one. So who is Genevieve, and what did you think of her character?
So Genevieve in the book is basically one of the nurses that runs the asylum. She's there. She's with all the Madwomen. That's what they call them. And she is kind of the... she's like the salt and pepper. She's always there. She's like, it's always on the table. Well, she's always there. She's a fixture within the asylum, and she's the one that's there as a constant for the girls. She is kind of cold in the beginning when you first meet her character. I found her almost so stern that I didn't like her. But as the book moves through, and I won't do any spoilers,
right?
But as it moves through with her character, you find a warmth to her, and you find
the reason for maybe her initial feeling of being cold.
Absolutely, and behind it, and the more you see her interact with the women in the asylum, the more you begin to realize how much she truly does care for them.
Right. Genevieve has been there for a long time. She was a doctor's daughter in a small village in France, and I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that. She studied a lot of her father's medical texts, and that's how she became to become a nurse. She wanted to help people, and so she decided she was going to become a nurse, and she moved to France and got the job at the Madwomen's asylum, and really became sort of the matriarch of the place. You know, everybody knew she was sort of the one in charge, the one to go to, the one who would help solve problems, even though she was very much sort of thought of as a stern presence. Okay. Anything else you want to say about Genevieve?
No, I think we covered her well.
Okay. Okay, so what kind of place was Salpêtrière? Did anything about it surprise you?
I think the whole concept of Salpêtrière is what surprises me the most. That a woman could be put in there into an insane asylum for just about anything.
Yep.
They talk in the book about a woman who basically had on her arm or was dating a younger man that was 10 or 15 years younger than her, and that was considered madness, so she was put in the insane asylum just because she was dating somebody that was younger than her, and that was inappropriate.
Women could be committed for anything, for just having depression was one of them, but other things too. Being epileptic would get you a life sentence in the insane asylum, and even there were other. Yeah, you're right. Like the woman who was dating the younger man, but also they would throw in like any man who felt that his wife or his daughter was not behaving as a woman should
for that time period.
He could commit her with no questions asked.
It was on his say-so, and basically your father could put you in there. So if a lot of times looking into this book a little bit more, I read about the history about this time frame. I mean, it was for reading. If you were a woman who read too much.
Ooh, especially if you read novels.
Yes, we would all of us would be in the asylum.
Yeah, we'd be in
we
trouble.
were readers. And the other thing too was if you read too much, or if you at all had some thought about women's suffrage, forget
Oh, yes.
you were considered definitely a person that would be put in the asylum.
Yeah. So this actually goes right into our next question. Discuss the character of Eugenie. Do you think she had a mental disorder? So Eugenie was a young woman who we meet at the beginning of the book, and she has this interesting, gift where she can see and speak with dead people.
And she is from the upper crust.
The bourgeoisie.
The bourgeoisie. So she is not your typical person that you would find in the insane asylum.
Right.
This is definitely somebody from the more upper crust in society, and her father was very tough on her because she was always kind of interested. In the beginning of the novel, you find that she goes with her brother Theo to a salon where they, by the salon, it's really basically a bunch of men hanging around smoking and drinking, talking about stuff.
Books and philosophy and mostly smoking and drinking, but
yes,
yeah,
it was an excuse to smoke and drink, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But they end up talking a little bit about this book about spirits, and she learns about it, and she basically takes it upon herself to go find a bookstore that will sell this to her, which is not any bookstore near her.
No.
So she was very independent-minded from the very beginning of the book, and her father was very unhappy with her from the beginning of the book because she felt like she acted out too much.
Right.
Well, she confides in her grandmother.
Her grandmother betrays her.
I was horrified.
Oh, I was so upset.
So basically, the grandmother tells the father and the brother that she can see dead people and that she's crazy, is basically what she calls her. And they have her committed to the asylum. And this is not really a spoiler because it's really the very beginning of the book, and it's the essence of the book. Because she's the main character.
Yes.
And so she's committed into this asylum, and they tell her, oh, we're just going to go out for the day and do some stuff, and then all of a sudden they show up there and they send her kicking and screaming. They just basically throw her away, and her father basically says, I never want to see you again. It's awful.
It's harsh.
It's very awful.
Yes.
But it's not so far off from what happened back in the day.
True enough.
And so it really kind of speaks to that. She's a very independent woman. I don't think she ever lose sight of, I want to get out of here. I'm going to find a better way. I'm not going to stay here. I don't think that even though she sees what's going on around her, she ever gets discouraged in that she has a drive.
I think she did. I mean, there was a specific amount of time there where she was completely, she was throwing every meal that they brought to her, she was throwing it against the wall and refusing to eat, but that didn't last very long. She got her senses back quite quickly. But I mean, your father basically dumps you in a mental institution and says you're no longer my daughter, and you're probably going to get a little upset about that. So I think that she had every right to be angry.
And it's amazing to me, the first thing they do with her is put her in solitary. So she goes from being, in society, part of society, and they strip her of everything she knows, and she's basically put in a tiny room that's kind of like dripping wet. It's very musty, and she's just stuck in there by herself with nothing all day long I think she was in there for like a week.
Yeah.
And so of course at this time it's when she's throwing the plates and food, and that's the only communication she's getting. And you just think about that, like how did that take her, even if she did truly have madness, which we haven't said whether she thinks she does or not, how would that make it better for her? Putting her in solitary confinement.
Right. Well, okay, so do you think she had a mental disorder? I don't think so. I think that there are a lot of things in this world that we can't explain. And whether or not she could speak to dead people is probably pretty much up to her. I mean, she did know things that nobody else could have known when she was talking to other people.
I think in the book, for the sake of the book, I would say no.
No,
I would say definitely with where the author was going, that she did not have a mental disorder. She had all her other capabilities about her.
Right.
And so I would say no as well. But I could see how it could be shocking when even just the book that talked about spirits was like taboo. It was something that you were not supposed to discuss.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to question 4. Genevieve and Eugenie form an unusual relationship. Who helps who the most, do you think? Let's talk about their relationship a little bit without giving away too much.
So, Genevieve and Eugenie, obviously you have the patient and you have the nurse. They almost reverse roles at certain parts in this book because Genevieve has a sister who she desperately wants to talk to, who is no longer with us.
Yeah, her sister died, Genevieve, the nurse.
And so when she finds out that Eugenie can actually speak to dead people, and Eugenie kind of throws it at her that I can talk to your sister, she feels a need to want to talk to her sister. And so it's been something that has really been hard on her for a long time. And so I think, in my opinion, I think Eugenie got more out of it because I think she helped her survive the asylum. But at the same thing, I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, so I think that Genevieve really got a lot out of this because Genevieve, the nurse, who was the nurse, she was so isolated herself.
True.
It was almost like she was in her own solitary confinement, self-imposed. She lived in a small apartment. She didn't have any friends. She didn't really have any acquaintances other than the people that she worked with. And so every night she would write a letter to her sister that she could never send because her sister was dead. And so she would just keep those in a file in the drawer. And she was very, very much alone in the world. And I believe that when Eugenie came along, it really helped Genevieve open part of herself back up that had closed off when her sister had died.
I get that. I agree with you. I mean, it was definitely a mutual
benefit. They helped each other in many
different ways.
Yes.
I think the obvious ways, and we're not going to get into them right now because it will be spoil the whole book. You'll find out later with Eugenie. But I think on a more learning about your internal person and becoming who you are and becoming that internal person that you want to be and finding a reason to live. there's a quote in here for the very end, and they ask the nurse, they say basically, what are you smiling about? And she says, isn't just great to smile about being, about existing? Isn't isn't just existing? Isn't that something to smile about?
Enough.
Yeah. And it's kind of an interesting quote because she was not that kind of person in the beginning of the book. That was definitely a mindset change for her.
Okay, so the last one, the title of the book is called The Madwomen's Ball. And in the title comes from an event that happens in the book where all of the women in the asylum are given costumes and ball gowns, and they invite the general public in, and they are allowed to commingle. Now, do you think first of all that the idea of the Madwomen's Ball is a good one, and who do you think benefits from it the most?
I think it's very morbid, the concept of it.
Right.
Personally, when I think about the ball, I think this is terrible. But in the book, the Madwomen would get very excited about it because it was a time when they would actually get to interact and somebody would actually see them. So there was some benefit to them actually having this ball. But I felt like the people were making fun of them.
The people were making fun of them.
And that it was really just a very sad...
It was like a spectacle. It was like a circus almost.
Yes.
Ooh, let's go see the crazy people.
Yes, and ooh, one of them touched me.
Yeah.
Or this one had a fit, or this one went into, one of them went into like an epileptic seizure, and it was like the best part of the ball.
Yeah.
And it was just, so from a human perspective, it kind of broke my heart a little bit that they would do this. And it was something that really did happen. And yet, for the purposes of the female, of the actual Madwomen, they really looked forward to it every year.
They did. It was their one chance to feel like they were something more than just their mental disease.
Right.
Yes.
I think the outsiders benefited more from it because I think they got their jollies out of it. I think that's what it was. They were getting entertainment from it.
Yes.
And so, and I think there was a lot of bad things that happened during the Madwomen's Ball. When you read the book, you'll see that were not beneficial for the young ladies that were there, that were the Madwomen.
Any final thoughts you want to say about the book before we go on?
I would just say it's a very quick book to read, and we are going to do our next discussion next week, but you have plenty of time to read it.
Oh, absolutely, and it's available on Hoopla, so you can download it today immediately and start reading. So, next week on January 25th, 2022 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so next week, same time, we are going to have a Zoom book discussion where you can call in from your computer or your iPad, and Irene and I will be there, and we'll have some other people there, and we can all talk about the book in its entirety. No more spoilers. Or all spoilers.
All spoilers okay.
Spoilers are okay. So call. So you want to email me, Anna.Karras, Karras, at colliercountyfl.gov to get your Zoom invitation. I will be more than happy to send you one. And thank you so much to everybody who tuned in to listen to us gab. We
Absolutely.
Enjoy it.
We have a good time, and thank you for your comments and your feedback. And please join us next week. We love having more people than less, so please come.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
See you.